Welcome, everybody. Welcome back if you've already been with us this morning online, and welcome to anyone who's just joining us. You're at Stronger Things 2024. We are live from the Guildhall in London. I'm very pleased to be here. It's already been a packed agenda. We've got a packed agenda for the rest of the day. Without much further ado, I am going to hand it over to Carl and Gav from Making Every Adult Matter for their session today.
Thanks so much, Sarah. Hi, everyone. Really glad to be here with you today. So my name's Carl, and you'll see my colleague Gav as well on the screen next to me, hopefully. We both deliver systems practice for the Making Every Adult Matter coalition. If Gav could just share his screen. Good stuff. Yeah, so we're just going to spend a bit of time with you today, just exploring systems leadership and talk a little bit about our approach to systems practice. Next slide, please, Gav. So you may not have heard of MEAM, or you may have heard of MEAM, but just briefly, we are a coalition of the national charities Mind, Homelessness Links and Collective Voice. MEAM came together in 2008 out of the recognition that services were not set up to support people experiencing multiple problems at once. And as a result, people dealing with multiple problems, they often had poor experiences of services and did not get their needs met and were labelled as chaotic or complex and not engaging. And these will be terms that I'm sure that we'll all be familiar with, still being used today to describe people in challenging circumstances. And so we as a coalition, we collectively recognise that as national organisations with large memberships and reach, we had the chance to do something collaborative and prevent our organisation from simply echoing the silo working that we saw at a local level. Next slide, please. So you see here, we operate a network of local partnerships distributed in all parts of England, and we support them to develop effective, coordinated approaches to multiple disadvantage that has been demonstrated to increase well-being, reduce cost to the public services, and also ultimately improve people's lives, which is what we're all about, really. So this includes practical support through coaching, consultancy and training, as well as acting as a critical friend and facilitating learning and networking with peers working on similar issues in other areas. As you can see on the list, there are currently 42 local areas in the MEAM Approach network, and we've also been chosen as the support providers for the remainder of the Changing Future contract, which includes 15 local areas, most of which were already part of the MEAM network anyway. We've listed here all the areas that we work with. So if you take a glance on the list and if there's any areas that you work within or that you recognise and you're not currently linked into your MEAM partnership, then please drop us a message and we can connect you with your area lead. If you're not on the list but you think that you'd like to learn more, then please get in touch with us and we can have a chat. And at the end of this session, there's a QR code at the end of the slides, which will give you the option to request more information and also receive the slides from the session. So our vision at MEAM is quite simple, really. It's that in every local area, people experiencing multiple disadvantage are supported by effective coordinated services and empowered to tackle their problems and reach their full potential and contribute to their communities. And to achieve this, we support local areas across England to make long-term sustainable changes to local systems. And we use our shared knowledge and practical experience from this work to influence policy at a national and local level. So just a little bit more on what we mean by multiple disadvantage. So MEAM's definition is that people facing multiple disadvantage experience a combination of problems, of intersecting problems. And for many, their current circumstances are shaped by long-term experiences of poverty, deprivation, trauma, abuse and neglect. And many also face racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and so on. And these structural inequalities intersect in different ways, manifesting in a combination of experiences, including homelessness, substance misuse, domestic violence, contact with the criminal justice system, and mental ill health. So multiple disadvantage is a systemic, not an individual issue, and people are failed by services and systems that seek to ignore the complexity of what it is to be human. And they focus often on singular issues, and that makes it a lot harder for individuals to address their problems and to lead fulfilling lives and contribute fully to their communities. So within the field of multiple disadvantage, historically, the way that we have dealt with that human complexity is to basically ignore it, or to simplify it, or to break the system down into specialized and segmented areas. And we end up with something that looks a little bit like this here. So here you can see that services are designed and commissioned and delivered in silos. And this isn't to say that there isn't really brilliant work taking place and good quality support being delivered to individuals on the front line, and lots of practice innovation as well happening within that at various different levels. However, we tend to find that each silo is created to respond to a single isolated issue rather than the whole picture of an individual's experience and need. And what often goes hand in hand with this is that services are also often built around the needs of the service rather than the individual. And on the whole, we know that existing systems often focus on deficits rather than strengths, that are guided by approaching individuals as problems to be fixed, and lacking approaches that view people seeking support as whole human beings with complex histories and experiences that must be recognised and understood. And these traditional ways of working can often add to people's problems. We've all heard of frustrations expressed by people feeling let down by the very services that were set up to support them. So ultimately, our message is about a troubled system. So our work is very much based on that sort of systems transformation level. And on that, I'm going to hand over to Gav to give a bit of an introduction into our approach to systems practice.
Thanks, Carl. So Carl's giving you a bit of an introduction to what we do at MEAM. What we're going to do now, we're going to just dive into a little bit of system stuff about kind of trying to appreciate what we mean by the term common mess or wicked issue, if you've heard that, complex problem. Then we are going to have a bit of a chat, not an experiment. We're not going to have a chat, not an experiment. And then we're going to talk about common action and how we can actually get this stuff happening in the world. Okay. So when we're talking about systems leadership in practice, which is what we're here to talk about, I like to open up with this quote here. Terry Pratchett, he said, "It's not worth doing something unless somebody somewhere would much rather you weren't doing it." It takes a minute to get your head around that because he's phrased it in quite an interesting way. But to me, what it means is if you're not annoying people, you're not doing it right. So I think, you know, as people who work in a system and often try to change it, you know, we can often feel frustrated that we've annoyed people, that we're asking those awkward questions of why are we doing it this way, and what is that, and how could we do this better? You know, if you're not annoying people with questions like that, then you're not really doing it properly. And so just if people feel that way in their work, I mean, I've been doing this work for nearly 15 years now, and I've always annoyed people. So it's normal, okay? It's not just plain sailing all the way. But I like opening with that because it brings a bit of humanity back into the work that we do, okay? Bit of reality. So what do we mean by systems leadership and systems stuff? Well, we are taught since children to see the world in a right or wrong way, a binary way, good or bad, black or white, right or wrong. And this is okay for some of the stuff that we face. But when we talk about complexity or wicked issues or messes and the real world, the problems aren't clear. The problem isn't straightforward. So the right wrong thinking doesn't really help us in this sort of with these sorts of problems in this sort of environment. And what happens is we end up running out of ideas. So you'll have all been party to a conversation where somebody says, "Hey guys, we're going to do this brand new initiative." And somebody who's been there for quite a while puts their hand up and said, "Yeah, we used to do it this way 10 years ago." So what happens when we continually apply right wrong thinking to messy problems? We just go around in circles. So what systems does, systems practice, systems leadership, what it enables you to do is to get all of the pieces of puzzle in a different way. And it enables you to build a kind of a more fuller picture of what's actually happening. And the approaches change the way we see those problems so that we can find new ideas and new ways forward, right? And what they also do is recognize that us as human beings are present in all of this stuff, whereas a lot of change and a lot of problem solving sort of sees humans as batteries or lever pullers within a big machine, where systems approaches recognize that we are human beings with dreams, frustrations, beliefs, you know, that control, influence the system as well. So it's very humanistic in how it works, and that's one of the reasons why I really like it. So if that's like a quick whistle stop tour around what we mean by systems leadership, or what we mean by working in a systemic way. One of the types of, if we think about this box up here, can I do this? If we think about this box up here, part of that mess that we face is, well, it is complexity. Okay, that's what complexity is. And one of the main types of complexity that we find in our work is perceptual complexity. You don't need to worry about that. Basically means points of view or perspectives, right? So we'll play a quick game. In the chat, I'll give you 5 seconds to think about it and write down in the chat, but don't press send until I say, what do you see in this picture? Okay, press send. Mask, a vertebrae, moth, bat, butterfly, ink blot, bat, moth, bug, bat. Squashed butterfly, right? That means you're a serial killer. So make sure you see me after. I'm joking. It's what these things are used for, these ink blots. But bat, butterfly, wolf, spinal cord, Rorschach test. Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Somebody said the other day, spatchcocked fox, which I thought was really interesting. Big blob of paint. Yeah. So I don't know how many people are in this room or how many people have commented, but let's say there's 20 comments there, and we've got 17 different things, right? That's a type of complexity. We're all looking at this same thing and we're all seeing it differently. And that's part of the issue that we face here when we're saying, how do we help people who face multiple disadvantage, or how do we solve this problem in this messy situation? And little to no work is done on helping everybody to roughly see the same thing or come to some agreement, right? And that's what systems approaches are really good at. And what, frankly, quite a lot of our work entails is working with this sort of stuff. So let's come to an example that's a little bit more grounded. So in our work, we'll look at somebody, or the system will look at somebody and go, oh, they're homeless. They've got a need. Deficit-based system, but we're not going to go into that. They've got a housing need. Okay, right. Let's design them a housing service. Let's deliver the housing service. Oh, that worked well, didn't it? Oh, did it? No, they're still homeless. Well, why are they still homeless? They had a housing need. We gave them a house. It's not quite how the world really works. The world looks a little bit more like this, where people who face multiple disadvantage, they experience the world a bit more like this, where actually the needs don't really exist in isolation. And so this represents a bit more of a truer understanding or a truer picture of what's going on. And here you can see what we're doing is we're bringing in the complexity, right? The different things that are happening here. There's a couple of key points here. Services are designed from the outside in. Each service says, I'm going to cut a bit of that person off, their housing, and I'm going to create a service that fits their need, or their substance misuse need, or their mental health need. And they design a thing that does that and just that. Now, it might do that very well, but it does that on its own, okay? And predominantly. Now, people who are trying to help here, people who face multiple disadvantage, they actually experience their life from the inside out, okay? Like, I don't know about you, but I don't wander around sort of segmenting all my needs out. It kind of just forms a new sort of mush in the middle, right? And that's how people really experience it. So there is a fundamental mismatch between how we deliver services and how people who receive them experience life, okay? That literally it's a fundamental mismatch, right? So that's kind of one thing that we have to work with here, and we have to do that a bit differently. The other thing to note when you look at things like this is that each service directly impacts the outcomes of the others, whether you like it or not, okay? So typical example, somebody's in housing and somebody's in substance misuse, right? They're in recovery and they're trying to sustain a tenancy. If they lose their tenancy, it's blatantly going to impact their recovery. And if they are kicked out of recovery or fail recovery, wrong word, but and then their housing tenancy is going to be impacted. Now, the services coordinate, they might chat, they might try to do things together, but each service is absolutely built to do its own thing. And the actions of the substance misuse by kicking the person out of recovery, or the actions of housing by kicking them out of tenancy, impact the outcome of the other, whether we like it or not. But we still don't design in this way, not at the level of commissioning, not at the level of whole system. Okay, so we try to knit these things together, but they don't quite work, all right? The only way to move forward in a space like this really is by taking common action, right? Moving this from my work to our work. That person belongs to all of those services, if you like, It's not just one, okay? And therefore, we should take the view that we need to work in a way that encompasses that person's experience of life, rather than trying to just solve each of our own piece of the puzzle, right? If that makes sense. You can think about this as stepping into that no man's land, which exists within the overlap of those diagrams, right? And the other thing to say that I should have said earlier is that this model that we're looking at now, this works for any area where there is a complex issue. You just put your own headings around the Venn diagram. Yeah, we just apply it to our work, okay? Time's running a bit short. You will get a copy of these slides if you scan the QR code at the end. Here are two stories, which are true stories, and you can read them in your own time, about when we get it wrong, okay? So when we focus on one circle rather than the whole lot, or when we use that right-wrong thinking rather than systemic thinking or systems leadership, okay? And then, you know, what basically happened on the one on the right is they tried to solve a problem with mosquitoes in Borneo, and they ended up having to parachute live cats into the jungles of Borneo to replenish the cat population that they inadvertently killed with the drugs that they killed the mosquitoes with. Okay, so you can just a bit of a flavor of that. These are quite good, so I'd have a look at them in your own time. Okay, here are two examples of what happens when we get it right. Okay, mother trees on the left. Trees communicate to each other, okay? They share information to each other and they share nutrients to each other. That is you're only able to understand that by looking at the whole picture, all of those circles, rather than just one or two, okay? It's really powerful stuff. And on the right there is a link to our 5-year evaluation about when you take a whole systems approach to working with people who face multiple disadvantage, you reduce rough sleeping by as much as 88%. You increase staff happiness and staff retention. You decrease visits to secondary services like A&E and overnight stays in custody, and so on and so forth, right? So there's some stuff for you to have a look at. Has anybody encountered any stuff like this in their work, or does the, you know, talking about complexity, does that resonate? Does anybody feel frustrated trying to change things? Hell yes. Good. Yeah, getting some hearts on that. Okay. Really powerful illustration of the meaning of benefits. Thank you. Yep, you're welcome. Thank you for the nice comment. More so, this is just to give you a bit of a pause from my voice, as I've got another couple of minutes before we move on. Here we go. Certainly, most issues we face in the public sector, yes. Definitely a big challenge that comes up in our work that is quite typically sector focused. Yes, indeed. Interesting work done in Gateshead. They call it liberated method. Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, the money hits the system and people are forced to compete for funding. Yes, exactly. So that's zooming out and understanding that while charity and all that is a good thing, the funding mechanisms and the funding streams actually hold that stuff down. Yeah, you only see that by zooming out, right? Starting to understand how those things connect from that systemic point of view. So Changing Futures, yeah, we are the delivery partner for Changing Futures. So we have a team of 3 who look after those 15 areas. Yeah, good. Okay, great. This is wonderful. Yeah, from me to we. Really good. All right, I'll move on just in the interest of time. We've got this stuff going on, and we've sort of said, so we can use systems to look at stuff. When we use systems, we get these new insights and these different ways of looking at things, and we start to realize, this is quite, you know, messy. What do we do next? I'll just give you a whistle stop through these, and then we're going to stop for a bit of a chat. All right. So broadly, action falls into 3 categories, right? And we'll go through these in a second. But when you look at this system, right, you've got in here 5 organizations or 5 collections of organizations, but they've got stuff, right? And you can think about this stuff a bit like this, that instead of circles, they're now squares. It's the same thing. But you can think of each of these as a model, right? Like a Lego model, okay? A house or whatever you want, but they're a model, okay? And they're built of bricks. And those bricks are skills, knowledge, expertise, experience, capacity, capability, so on and so forth. And this is to your point, Cheryl, about if we do things differently. So we've got a bunch of this stuff that's built up into a model and it's fixed in that way. Okay. So we take this understanding and we use this to explore the different types of change. So coordination, right? The models are not broken down. Each model here stays the same. Their expertise, capability is built up in the same way. And all we do is we rearrange those models differently, okay? We arrange them differently in time or space. That is coordination, okay? That's all we do. Now, you can think of this a little bit like if these ones on the left, think of this as a town, you're looking down at a town from the top view. Coordination is a bit like helping somebody navigate those. So they stay the same and we help the person navigate them a bit differently, okay? This can be joint visits, joint meetings, that kind of stuff. And there can be some coordination plus, which is a bit deeper, but that's essentially what that is, okay? Now, it is a good thing, but we can think of it as doing the wrong thing righter, okay? Because if what we are doing now is the wrong thing, then what we're doing is doing it a bit better, okay? So it's still useful. It gives people a better experience, but it's still overall what we would argue is the wrong thing, okay? So single system change or system flex is a term you might have heard of. Here what we have is where the models are changed slightly, but often without consideration of the other models, okay? So you've all been in a place, either in an organization or wherever, where another team or another organization changes the way they do stuff, and it completely messes you up, okay? That's this. So we change the shape of each model or one model or any of them, but we change them in isolation from each other. So the peach one here becomes an ellipse rather than a square. We've put the Lego bricks around differently. This one's now a triangle. We've put the bricks around differently. But if you were to try and put these into a coordinated space now, they don't fit together very well, right? Single system change in isolation produces conflict, okay? And this, again, it can be good, right? It can be good when you do it with consideration of how the other ones work, okay? But it's still doing the wrong thing righter. Holistic transformation is a bit different, okay? Imagine all these Lego bricks here, all these Lego bricks and all these different models. What we're going to do, we're going to break them all down. We're going to throw them into one big box. So we've got one big box of multicolored Lego bricks, okay? And then from the middle of that Venn diagram, we're going to build something that is multicolored. Okay, a multicolored single thing, a multicolored house model. I do not mean one house with a blue room, a red room, a green room. I do not mean one room with a blue wall, a red wall, a green wall. You see this color here is a little bit like the color you get when you mix all the Play-Doh together. I'm talking about a building, a room that's made of that color. Okay, now, arguably, this isn't real. Arguably, nobody's here yet. So this is really a bit of a provocation, right? What would this look like? Okay, in your work, in your dream big, somewhere else, it doesn't matter. But think about what that would look like, to Cheryl's point about if we took all of those Lego bricks and we arranged them differently together, what would that look like? And we can think of this as doing the right thing. Yeah. So there's been a few more chats in the chat, which hopefully everyone's catching up with. Yeah, good. So I think I'm just going to hand you over to Carl now, who's going to see you out to the end. At the end, he's going to leave the QR code up for a minute, so you can scan that with your phone, contact us, and we'll send you a copy of the slides. Absolutely no problem. All right. And of course, reach out to us for a chat. We'd love to hear about what you've been up to and what you're doing and stuff. So yeah, we're happy to chat anytime.
Yeah, cheers, Gav. Really interesting conversation there. Some really key points coming up. So we are really pushed for time. So I'm going to have to do a bit of a razz through here to try and get through this. What I wanted to do, just try and bring it all together a little bit and think a little bit about the different types of leadership required for common action and some of the things that Gav went through there. I'm putting up this quote here. My screen will allow. So, okay, just checking my thing. So because of its nature, the kind of leadership needed for systems change is quite different from the traditional conception. So we tend to think of leadership as a position at the top of an organisation, and that comes with authority to make decisions and have those executed by other people often. However, systems change is about leading across boundaries, meaning that you will be leading with very little authority. So for me, when I think about what being a systems leader is all about, it often comes down to collaboration, really. And that's why I really like this quote here, because what this tells us is that no one person is a systems leader on their own. It's about many people with varied skill sets and working at different places within a system in order to achieve a shared purpose. And that leads us to the MEAM intervention tool. So this is the approach that we take within our systems practice within MEAM. It's a tool that we use, and of course there are many different schools of systems thinking, as well as a wide range of sort of frameworks and approaches. And it's important to find the right tools for you, depending on the types of work that you're doing. But this approach that we use is a 4-part cyclical framework for intervening in systems that don't work for people facing multiple disadvantage. And it really helps local areas tackle complex problems. As I say, it's an iterative process of building the right group of people to begin with in that build phase, and then diving deep to explore the problem area, if you like, or an area of interest, and developing an understanding of the connected issues that maintain the problem. And then it's about sort of piloting new approaches and embedding learning. And this framework builds on the cyclical nature of systems practice. There isn't sort of one silver bullet or fixed solution. There's no end point either. Systems practice is an ongoing cycle of action and learning, which crucially acknowledges the value in this learning and depends on the reframing of a more sort of our more traditional definitions of what success and failure might look like. And in that way, this tool has demonstrated to be really good for framing experiments and tests. So we can think of it as, we can think of systems leadership, if you like, as an approach for getting people to go through this framework, or getting a multi-agency partnership or a group to go around that intervention loop. I'm really whizzing through these now because notice we're up against time. So just a summary of some of the things that we've touched on here. Often our work is you know, it's not as simple as we like to think. We are essentially working on a set of nested messes. A few other key points there that we've been through. A couple of top tips, which I would very briefly touch on. The top one for me is a really important one. If you're not having fun doing it, then you're not doing it right, really. And it's something that we try to integrate within our work, is bringing in that fun. This is really deep, heavy work often. And, you know, embedding some fun into the way that we go about our systems practice is a way of just maintaining the movement, if you like, and maintaining a sense of purpose, and not getting that compassion fatigue that we often experience within this sector. A couple of other key top tips there as well. Listen as well. Listen to the system. It's about exploring and digging in. Just to touch on what we do again, just to explain some of the work that we do. So we are a specialist systems consultancy. So we work with partnerships around the country, in particular within those 42 areas that I mentioned earlier, but not explicitly to those. So we do work also on a commercial basis with various different areas. We deliver systems leadership development programs. Co-production is embedded within our work, and I'm ashamed to say almost that co-production gets a footnote at the end of this slide, because co-production is absolutely embedded in our work. All of our training, all of our sessions that we deliver are developed with people with lived experience. A few other key points there. Some further reading, which you can access if you access the slides here. Just give you a moment just to scan the QR code there, and you'll be able to fill in a form, receive our slides. By signing up as a supporter of MEAM, you'll get a 5% discount on any commercial work that we do. But do have a look at the network as well and see what areas we're currently working in. And if there's anything of interest there, then please do reach out to us. And thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Carl and Gav. That was a really fascinating session. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you all for your engagement and participation in that.